Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Mary Oliver. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Seasons of Jason podcast, and thank you for joining me on this journey. Before we get into it, just a quick reminder that you can read about all of my hiking and backpacking adventures, well, at least the ones I've managed to write up so far, over at seasonsofjason.com. In the last episode, I told you about a sort of accidental hike just beyond my backyard when I lived in Boulder City, Nevada. It was like the prologue to adventure, that light bulb switching on over your head aha moment that unlocks this world of new possibilities. Today's episode is about the first hike that I ever did on purpose back in the spring of 2016. As you've noticed by now, I love including a subtle nature soundscape in the background of these episodes, and I really wanted to revisit the location of that first hike in Nevada and record some field audio before producing this episode, but it just didn't work out. Instead, you'll be hearing the sounds of Lewis Creek in the Sierra National Forest from a location about 2 miles south of Red Rock Falls. Okay, let's hit the trailhead and talk about my very first hike. The Goldstrike Canyon trailhead is located about 5 miles outside of Boulder City, Nevada, along Highway 93 as you're heading toward Hoover Dam. I knew from studying the trail notes in my newly acquired guidebook, that's Hiking Las Vegas by Branch Whitney. I knew from studying that it would involve ropes and down climbs over some slippery, very large boulders, and that gave me a lot of anxiety. But I tried to stuff it down, and I trudged forward. The hike begins unremarkably, really. It's this gradual descent that meanders underneath a towering concrete bridge holding up Highway 93. Once the bridge is out of sight, you're suddenly surrounded by canyon walls that are hundreds of feet high. Centuries of persistent, punishing winds and water have turned these rock walls into works of art, very unique works of art, gradually eroding caves into the rock and punching pockmarks into them in the most unusual places. It's breathtaking, but not necessarily due to the visuals. It's really that realization of the sheer force of nature having its way with objects that seem permanent and unshapable, indestructible. It's a slow, steady marathon of change and fluidity, and it's kind of awe-inspiring. So there was the occasional dull roar of the highway, but eventually it just fades into nothingness. It gets so impossibly quiet that you could hear a lizard scramble across the rocks in front of you. About 1.5 miles in, I finally heard some upbeat female voices, and I caught up to them as they were carefully scrambling down a series of large boulders that represented my first real challenge. It wasn't just that, that constant fear of my knee giving out, but there was also a mental challenge. Did I really have the confidence and the perseverance after previously giving up not even 2 miles from my backyard? And I know this is trivial to most people. Hell, it was laughably easy in hindsight, but never underestimate what years of self-doubt and pain can do to your psyche. Those years of believing that I had a handicap made this an almost insurmountable obstacle in my mind. One of the women was struggling with the descent. She was visibly fearful and unsure what to do with her feet and her hands, and that mirrored my own anxiety perfectly. But her friends were instructing her, coaxing her down, being really supportive and helpful. When her feet once again met the gravel trail, she had this beaming smile and looked up at me, warning that yes, the rock was slippery in a certain spot. But she said, "Turn your body this way. Okay, put your right foot right there, grab this handhold here, Use the rope for stability, and she was instructing me the whole way down. I love that she instantly paid her newly acquired knowledge forward. And that will become for me kind of one of the pillars of the hiking community. It's something I just fell in love with. But like I said, it was far easier than I expected, but this was my first real hike, and I was still being irrational and fearful. And, that probably wouldn't go away for several years. 2 miles further down, I saw thin ribbons of warm liquid starting to materialize in the sand. It was exciting. I followed the water with my eyes as it spilled into a hot spring obscured by this massive boulder. And this boulder eclipsed the size of the last one that had left me almost paralyzed with fear. I descended this one, though, a little less timidly, but still really cautiously, kind of half climbing and half sliding, probably taking forever. I was nervous and anxious, but driven forward by what nature had in store for me. As I landed, an older man waved at me really cheerfully from inside a hot spring that looked like it was about 4 feet deep. I was completely out of breath, but I tried to engage in some small talk as I stripped down to my underwear and slid in, using the hot spring's mossy rock wall like kind of a slide. As I was soaking in this unbelievable 102-degree hot spring in the middle of the desert, I met his brother Gavin. Gavin lived in Las Vegas, and when I asked him about his career, he said that he, quote, drove paddle boats in circles at the Venetian. This poor man had to deal with tourists daily, and I've seen a lot of those tourists, and they are no walk in the park. And like me, he really hated CES, which is the Consumer Electronics Show, but probably for vastly different reasons. Just two little side notes here, going off script a little bit, but I spent several years attending the Consumer Electronics Show as a tech journalist when I was at Forbes. And there is no bigger display of sheer human chaos than that event. Not just in the event, but outside on the Las Vegas Strip too. And the second side note is, I remember asking Gavin what he did for a living. Those are the words I used. What do you do for a living? And I've stopped asking people that question because I want to start asking people, what do you do in life that you love? Or something to that effect that doesn't have such an emphasis on what do you have to spend a third of your life doing to eat and pay rent. It's just not, I'd rather engage with people on a level that they're passionate about what they do, if that makes any sense. Okay, so I'm getting to know Gavin, and he tells me about this adventure he had in some Arizona hot spring, and I apologize, I don't remember the name of it, but he said he stumbled upon 2 naked folk singers practicing for their next gig, and he couldn't remember their name or anything, but he did remember their remark about the acoustics being perfect out there. He was loaded with colorful stories like this, and I just sat and listened for probably the better part of 2 hours as he just kind of teleported all of us into his little pocket universe of interesting adventures. You know who I felt like? I felt like Fred Savage's character in The Princess Bride, hearing that wondrous, exciting, unbelievable tale for the first time. I was captivated by absolutely everything around me, all the people, every molecule, every scent, sound, sensation. My emotions were so amplified, and I felt hope and a pure joy like I had never experienced. As my skin started shriveling like a raisin and Gavin continued verbally cataloging his various outdoor adventures, we were joined by a couple college kids hiking back up from the Colorado River, which I later found out was pretty close. They slipped into the water and quietly enjoyed his stories too. Eventually, we all introduced ourselves and gave abbreviated outlines of our personalities and our jobs and our hobbies. And it really seemed like no one wanted to be the first to get out and leave. So, this first hike, which began with all kinds of anxiety and hesitation, culminated in an overweight tech journalist, that was me, a couple of older hippies, and a group of college kids all sitting in a hot spring together in the middle of the desert, sharing stories and being uncommonly friendly with each other. And I wondered, is this how the world worked before technology just consumed us and we started having relationships with things instead of with people? Before the veil of anonymity turned us into assholes? Is this what it felt like to not have an hourly schedule, to not care about notifications, to not feel rushed, to not be concerned with appearances and posturing, to know that at least inside this desert canyon in this moment, everyone is helpful and hopeful and happy? Time melted away so quickly that I never made it down to the Colorado River, which was actually the end of the trail. But next time I would. Right now, at that moment, it was challenging enough to drag myself out of that glorious hot spring. Thank you once again for listening to the Seasons of Jason podcast and for putting up with this really erratic release schedule. I am so sorry. Finding balance in my life is tricky, and it's always been a challenge for me to be able to schedule and organize all of my creative pursuits. I have another podcast and YouTube channel called Linux for Everyone, and that kind of took center stage for a little bit, but I'm trying to get back to releasing these on a semi-regular basis because I get joy from just recounting these experiences and sharing things about nature with you, and I hope you get some enjoyment from listening. If you want to get in touch with me about this episode or about hiking in general, check the show notes for how to do that at seasonsofjason.com. And until we chat again, take care and take care of each other.